Hello again and welcome back to the PhatPhish Guitar Studio. I'm doing this video actually for the second time. I actually recorded this, lost some of the footage off the camera, and to cut a long story short I'm having to shoot the whole thing again. It's in response to one or two questions I've had from people, so if you're one of the people I promised a video to and then it's taken ages to get out, I'm sorry for the delay, but here we go. This video really is about how to develop your technique for playing lead lines over chord progressions. Now, you can't, I don't believe you can teach like the creative process. There's not a magic formula for teaching how to play solos, how to improvise lead lines over the top of chord progressions. But there are some things that I can show you for you to bear in mind and to help you think through certain things that you do, and hopefully help you to develop your own technique and your own creative process. If you've been playing for any length of time and you've been learning scales and so on, you might have fallen into the trap whereby you can play through scales and scale patterns relatively quickly. But when you come to apply those, as when you're playing lead lines over the top of chords, you find yourself basically just running through scales and you're not really being particularly musical about it. So what I thought I'd show you in this video, it might end up being two videos actually, because it is quite a long, probably quite a long lesson. For those of you who've been playing for quite a while, some of this might be a refresher, some of it might just be material you want to fast forward over. If you're a beginner, take as long as you like on it. If it's something you spend, you work on over a few days or off and on over the course of a few weeks, it doesn't matter, just work at your own pace. What I want to show you in these exercises is basically just how to step away from just playing scales and scale patterns and thinking much more about the notes in the scale, thinking about how they relate to the chords. So really it's an exercise in slowing down and really thinking about what you're playing and listening and sort of like reacting to what you're hearing. So really what we're going to do is just start off by recording just a basic chord to play over the top of, and then I'll show you how to play notes from the scale and think about how they react and interact with the underlying chord. Okay, so let's get ourselves a chord to use as the basis for the exercise. Let's use A minor, so I'll record a minor 7 chord. Here I'm just going to be using the looper on my delay pedal down here. If you've got a looper or something, that's ideal. Otherwise, just record yourself playing a chord over and over again, play that back, and you can use that as the backing. Okay, so let's get the basic chord recorded. Put the amp on standby while that whirls away. What I'm going to do is let that chord play in the background and then play one note from the scale in turn. And what I want to do is listen to how each note sounds against the underlying chord. So here we've got the chord. It's an A minor chord, so let's play the first degree of the scale over it. Let's play an A. And listen to how that sounds. It's fairly comfortable. It fits in, it's resolved. It's what you'd expect because you're playing an A over an A minor chord. How about the second degree of the scale? Let's play B. Now that doesn't sound quite so happy, does it? That's because the B doesn't actually belong to the chord. It belongs to the key, it belongs to the scale of A natural minor. But because it's not the chord, you get a little bit of tension. Okay, let's try the flat third degree. Now that one is in the chord. So there's the C. It sort of fits in with the chord, but it doesn't sound as happy as the A. Does it? And we can do this on each degree of the scale. Play the fourth degree, the D. Fifth degree, the E. Flat sixth degree, the F. And flat 7 degree, the G. So what you can hear there, and like I say, you can do this exercise yourself, go at your own pace, play this as often as you need to get your ear tuned in to what you're hearing. But what you should be able to notice is that some notes sound more resolved against the chord than others. So like the root note of the chord, the A, that sounded really comfortable against the chord. The second degree, the B, maybe it's not so much so. It's still in the key, so it doesn't sound wrong, but it's sort of telling you that's not a note that you necessarily want to linger on. Or actually you might, if you wanted to play something that gave you a little bit more sort of tension in what you're doing. So that's an interesting thing, talking about tension and release. So your basic exercise, the first exercise that you're going to do is just play that chord over and over again and play just one note. Now I know this sounds trivial, but it's very much an exercise in listening rather than an exercise in playing. Just play one note. Also think about how you're playing the note. If you put maybe a little bit of gentle vibrato onto it, rather than just playing just the note just dead. Compare and contrast how they sound. So little things that you can do to change the way and influence the way that your lead line sounds. So there's your first exercise. Playing each scale tone in turn and analysing mentally and orally how it sounds against the underlying chord. Now, we talked there about some notes sounding quite resolved and quite comfortable, others sounding a little bit more unresolved. So how about we play two notes? Think about playing a note that we think sounds resolved, followed by a note that sounds less resolved, or the other way, play a note that sounds fairly unresolved and go back to a note that sounds reasonably resolved. Let's stick with the first and second degree. The first degree we know sounds comfortable. The A over the A minor chord sounds good. The B over the A minor chord, possibly not so. Okay, let's kick the loop in again and try playing those notes in combination. So here's our loop. Let's start off on the unresolved note and then go to the resolved note. So we'll start on a B and go down to an A. So that's quite a nice way to finish. Your ear is happy with where that ends because it's ending on a note that's happy and resolved against the underlying chord. Unresolved. Now let's try it the other way. Let's go from the A, which is a fairly resolved tone, up to the B, which is less resolved. Like this. Now that wants to go somewhere else, doesn't it? It's not a natural resting place. So we might want to think about taking that to another note. That's an interesting one. Just going up the flat third. We're going to from an A to a B to a C. The A is very resolved. The B not so resolved. It's not a chord tone at all. It belongs to the key. Don't get me wrong. It's not a wrong note to play, but it's got more tension in it, and it sort of demands resolution. It needs to go somewhere. So taking it up to the C, the flat third, which is a chord tone, it sounds a bit better. It's still not as resolved as the A, but it's sort of takes your ear somewhere that the ear is more comfortable. So let's try that again. Resolved, tense, less tense. Then take that down to the A, completely resolved. And as with a single note exercise, try this yourself. Take as long as you need to experiment with moving between notes. Just play it, if you like, with just pairs of notes. Try something that you think you've found is fairly resolved, go into something unresolved. You know, which notes sound more or less resolved than others? What does it sound like when you move between them? Now I know this sounds almost trivial, just, you know, we want to talk about how you can play good lead lines, but we're just talking here about playing two notes. But really what I'm wanting you to do is to get into understanding and appreciating the way that a note in your lead line complements or interacts with the chord that you're playing over the top of. Okay? So there's the first thing to think about, is what an individual note sounds like, and then think about moving between notes. Now here we're just moving between adjacent notes and looking at tension and release, or resolution and then introducing tension. You can move between any two notes in the scale, so try experimenting with bigger intervals. If you've done any ear training, or you're familiar with sort of like intervallic theory, if you're not, I will put some links in the information section down there to some other videos I've done about intervals, about being able to hear the distance between two notes and how that sounds. But there's your basic foundation of the exercise, and you can work, like I say, at your own pace, but this could keep you busy for days, just trying different chords and different scales, major scales, minor scales, whatever, and hearing how you can move from sort of comfortable notes to less comfortable notes and vice versa. The next thing you need to think about is sort of like the way that you play the notes. So let's talk again about just moving between two notes in the scale, where there's a tense note and a more resolved note, and vice versa, and think about how long you stay on each one. So playing like a short note followed by a long note, or a long note followed by a short note. Okay, let's put the backing chord on and work through a couple of examples. Okay, so I've got the chords again. Let's go from the A to the B again. This time we'll do a really short lead-in note followed by a longer following note. Now let's try that the other way with a long lead-in note and a short following note. Something like this. So can you hear the difference there? The resolution, the tension that you put in by playing a less resolved note second is definitely there. It's much more pronounced in the first example because you're playing that note for so much longer, and your ear's sort of almost crying out, I need to go somewhere from here, because it's not a comfortable place for the melody to be. It needs to go to something more resolved. Second example, we're doing exactly the same thing. We're playing an A followed by a B, but the B is a relatively fleeting note, so there's a little bit of tension there, and it's almost resolved by having nothing. So that's something else you can do. Don't just think about the notes that you can play, but think about something like not playing a note, introducing some tension and taking it away. So what we'll do now, similar exercise, but we'll go from the less resolved B down to the more resolved A, with long and short and long combinations. So let's try short B followed by a long A. So there, the unresolved note just gives you a sort of a kick into the long resolved A. Now let's try it the other way around. So in that second example, you still get the resolution onto the A, but I feel like it's a bit less rewarding for the ear, because it's there and then it's gone. So think about not just what you're playing, but the timing of the notes. And as well as the timing of the notes relative to each other, like long note, short note, long note, whatever, think about the timing of the notes with regard to the rhythm of the underlying chord. So listen to the rhythm that we've got here. 1, 2 and 3, 4, and 1, 2 and 3 and 4, and play those notes from the scale over the top. Just try different notes from the scale and think about how you're timing them relative to the rhythm that you're playing over the top of. sort of idea. Again, something, just go away, experiment on your own, and use your ears and listen to the rhythm. Think about the timing of the notes that you're playing. It's all about just kind of tuning your ear in, because if you play things that are complementary to the rhythm, they will sound better. If you play notes that are really strongly against the rhythm, maybe it won't sound so good. Probably also noticed when I was playing there, different ways I was transitioning between the notes. I'm not just playing a note followed by a note. Sometimes I was doing slides, sometimes I was doing bends. And this is something else you can think about when you're building up your melody lines. You don't always have to just do notes picking one to the other. You can think about playing transition between notes as bends, as slides, hammer-ons, pull-offs and that. There's loads of different techniques. If you've been playing for a while, you should be familiar with this sort of thing, with doing slides and slurs and things like that. So think about how you can incorporate those into your playing. As I said at the start, this isn't something I can just teach you a formula for this is how you build a solo, this is how you build a lead line. And in a way, I'm glad that there isn't a formula, because it allows you to just look at the different factors, try things for yourself, see what works for you, and out of that, these pointers, you can start to develop your own style, your own technique. As you progress, obviously you can play faster lead lines, but try to avoid just going full shred. The point of this exercise is to get you away from just playing scales and scale-based patterns. It's about listening to how the notes that you're playing relate to the underlying chord and how they interact with it. So remember to give in your lead lines to give the notes space to breathe. Pause every so often. Somebody said about blues, and it's true about any style of music. I think it's not just the notes that are important; it's the gaps in between them. They're equally powerful. So think about how you're phrasing your lead lines rather than just going for a constant sequence of 16th or 32nd notes. There's more to playing lead lines than just being able to play fast. It's got to have some feeling to it, and hopefully this is something that this exercise will help you to progress towards having some solos with a bit more feel and a bit more taste to them. So there's something. It's very much as a starting point, really. As I said at the beginning, you can take as long as you need for this sort of exercise, whether it takes you a few days or it's something that you experiment with and play with over the course of a few weeks. If you're quite new to this, start slowly and really spend time thinking about the way that individual notes sound against the underlying chord. If you maybe is a bit more experienced, you can kind of skip ahead a little bit, or you might actually want to really do the whole exercise to death and use it as a bit of a refresher. It's up to you. The important thing is don't try and rush ahead too much. Don't start playing lines where you're joining notes together if you're not already familiar or comfortable with the idea of how individual notes sound against the chords and how certain scale tones sound more resolved than others and all that sort of thing. Explore the whole scale, every note in the scale against the underlying chord, different intervals that you have available to you. There's a whole bunch of stuff that you can do. It's all about just experimenting, listening, and sort of acting on what you hear to build up your own technique and your own style, and using all of the techniques that you're aware of and familiar with, things like string bending, slurring, hammer-on, vibrato, tapping, whatever. Have fun with that, experiment, and as always, if you've got any other questions that you want to ask me either in relation to this video or anything else, there is a link down here to a page on the PhatPhish website where you can post questions. Thanks very much for watching. If you're not subscribed to the PhatPhish YouTube channel, then please click on the subscribe button down wherever it is, so you can see any new videos that I post on YouTube. So that's the lot for now. Thanks very much for watching, and I'll see you in another video next time. Bye for now.